Faith Matters. An interactive program brought to you by MTA International.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of Faith Matters, an interactive program where you, our viewers here on MTA, set the agenda according to the questions you want answered by our distinguished panel. Well, first of all, before we go anywhere, I'd like to thank you once again for your emails that you've been sending in and indeed your faxes with a range of different questions that are being asked of our panelists who visit us here at Faith Matters. For today's program, though, we will be focusing specifically on certain questions that have been raised in the context of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the community's beliefs, its principles, what it stands for, and indeed many of the activities it conducts throughout the world. And in this regard, we hope during the course of the questions and indeed the answers that you'll hear, that if there are other questions which arise, please do email us in. And right at the start, I'd like to remind viewers of the email. It's faithmatters, one word, at mta.tv. That's faithmatters at mta.tv. And for those of you using a fax, the fax number is 44 for here in the UK, 208 687 8037. Once again, 44 for the UK, 208 687 8037. And with that, I wish to extend a very warm assalamu alaikum to my distinguished panel with me today. First of all, if I could please introduce Munir Saab. He's a controller of production here at MTA, but he's also responsible for Arabic affairs and indeed lived in Palestine before his arrivals on British shores. Welcome, Munir Saab. I'm also delighted to introduce to viewers Azhar Hanif Saab. He is a missionary in South Midwest United States. Azhar Saab, welcome to Faith Matters.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
And I also would like to welcome to Faith Matters Tara Selby Saab, who is our regional missionary in the northeast of the UK. Welcome, assalamu alaikum once again to Faith Matters. Gentlemen, as I've said in my introduction, one of the things that is constantly raised are the questions and, dare I use the word, even allegations, unfounded, against the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, what we stand for, what we believe in. And really what we wanted to do today was tackle some of those issues and through the answers you provide, illustrate that how some of these are just, well, all of them in fact, are unsubstantiated and indeed unfounded. But certainly we felt it was important to look at these issues in the context that they're being put and often out of the context that they're actually being alleged in. So if I could sort of start off with a first question, and I'd also like to say to viewers, these aren't just questions we've received. Indeed, there was recently a program on one of the other Muslim channels, Iqra TV, which raised a series of questions and allegations against the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. And in that context, many of our own community members and others who were watching that program and indeed watch Faith Matters have written in with some questions. So without further ado, I'll actually go to one of the first questions, which is given to us by Rashid Ahmad Saab from North London. Jazakallah for your question. And the actual question is, was the Ahmadiyya Jamaat planted by the British? Was Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad himself praised by the British and said, and indeed praised the British and said that if it was not for the rule of the British, his movement, i.e. the Ahmadiyya community, would not have flourished under a Muslim rule? Tara Selby Saab, we're sitting here in Britain. Britain is something that, as a country, has an association with the community, but this is an allegation against it. What's your thoughts?
It's a common allegation, and of course it's total nonsense. The fact of the matter is that St. Paul in the Bible said that if Jesus did not die on the cross, then all our preaching is in vain. In other words, all the basic tenets of Christianity is based around the death of Jesus. Now, keeping that in mind, of course, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam, he proved quite clearly of the death of Jesus. Now, that means that he's proving that Christianity is to be destroyed as such. Now, it's total nonsense to then say that the British government has planted him, planted a person who's going to destroy the religion of the country. How can this be so? So obviously the fact that Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam has raised so many objections against the teachings and tried to prove that obviously Jesus did in fact die on the cross shows that he cannot be an agent. He went as far as to invite Queen Victoria to Islam. So again, this shows that they're not going to part someone who is going to try and invite their own queen to come to Islam. The fact of the matter is, Britain, especially in those days, but even so up to today, has given certain rights. And he expressed that this is good rights, it's good freedom. You have freedom to practice your faith. You have freedom of speech and so on and so forth. These freedoms we find even in this country to this day. And the fact is there's unfortunately certain Muslim countries like Pakistan and things like that that don't give this particular freedom. So this was what he was praising. And this is something which we should recognise. If there is any good qualities in anybody, you should recognise that and praise that. And so this is what he did. He praised those good qualities and that freedom to practice the faith, which unfortunately I say is being deprived by some countries.
It is ironic. So what Hazrat Promised Messiah actually focused on was the system of governance. That here was a good example of good governance in effect. And his primary mission as the Promised Messiah, as set out in all the Holy Scriptures, but certainly in the Quran, that when the Promised Messiah would come, he would seek to, if you like, rebuke and rebuff those presentations from the Christian missionaries around India, as was at that time, about, if you like, that Jesus is still alive and that the cross would be destroyed. But this was done through argument. I think there's this misconception that other Muslims sometimes have, that somehow the Messiah would arrive and would go round breaking the cross, and not least because women across the world in the Christian faith actually have those tied round their necks. So it seems a rather strange sort of proposition for the Messiah.
Certainly so. I mean, obviously, if we take it literally, you're going to get in all sorts of trouble.
Of course.
Anybody can build a cross, and this is not the purpose of a prophet, that he comes just for these minor things of going around breaking crosses or running after pigs and killing pigs. This is symbolic of Christianity. So it means that Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ prophesied that when Jesus would come, he would break the cross, he would kill the swine. It means that he would destroy the tenets of Christianity, as of the Christianity of today, which is not the Christianity which was preached by Jesus Christ. Of course, Jesus Christ, ﷺ, we have great respect for.
Indeed.
But that's the message that he gave to the early Jewish Christians as they became. So these false teachings that's been allude to Jesus Christ, this is what he broke. And one of the ones was, of course, this supposed death. And it's quite clear in the Bible and in the Holy Quran that Jesus did not die on the cross. And now evidences keep coming all the time to prove this. So he started this, and this was, in fact, as you said, his true mission. So, like I say, to say that he's planted by the British, it's very foolish of the British, and the British are not foolish.
Indeed.